Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the F4L Headquarters podcast. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yes. Yes, indeed, folks. It is here. And welcome again to the F4L Headquarters podcast. I am your host, the F4L icon, Sean Jazz Stevens. Now, ladies, calm down. Relax. Oh, goodness me. All right, well, apparently the ladies are excited for our Mother's Day special over the weekend. Guys all appreciate it anyway. So anyway, guys, yesterday was Mother's Day, and I hope you guys all had a great time, and hope you guys honored your mothers in their own special way. Apparently, I'm finding out that Mother's Day is actually celebrated multiple times a year in multiple cultures. So it's not just the American culture that celebrates mothers and recognizes them on a certain day. Apparently, there is another holiday for mothers other parts of the country, of the world, rather. Here in America, it's always practiced the third Thursday of the month of May. But in other cultures, apparently it's also celebrated at a different time period in England or in the UK, and then another time in Russia. So it is practiced all over the world, and they practice at random times. I'm curious why we don't just have it segregated a day, much like Father's Day. I don't see why we don't just have it all on the same day or throughout the world, since, I mean, let's face it, a lot of people around the world should be celebrating their mothers and fathers on their specific days. And I think that's important to realize where we come from, and how we got to be where we are is usually because of who our parents are, for the most part. Unless you're, of course, you're in my family. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So today, folks, we're going to have a little bit of a mix of everything. It is Motivation Monday, first and foremost. And for me, I feel that Motivation Monday for me is very important because it gives me an opportunity to inspire others to go after and go and achieve their goals and dreams and whatever they're trying to do. And I find that sometimes we all need in life someone to help us, someone to give us some inspiration, someone to be the voice of reason, and someone to kind of give us something, some hope that everything's going to be okay. And I can tell you, though, folks, that life is full of ups and downs, lefts and rights. Not everyone in life has a clear path to greatness. A lot of people, for the most part, no matter who achieves something, there's usually a long and rocky road to get there. Myself included. We all have things we have to overcome in order to get to where we are. We just need to find our ways to get us to where we need to be. We need to find our approach and kind of zero in on whatever it is that is important to us as people. Because everyone has different goals and different aspirations and different reasons for various different things. Somebody might have the same goal in mind, end goal, but might have in mind for a different reason. For example, someone might want to be heavily influenced and become someone who is heavy into fitness, right? But for some people, they want to be bodybuilders, and they want to go in to be competing in bodybuilding competitions. And then there are some people who just want to be fit just to be fit and be maybe fitness models on the cover of fitness magazines and be kind of fitness models versus just bodybuilders. Because believe it or not, they are different. There's a different physique for both. People who want to be fit and be like, quote, fitness models, they just want to be, they want to let people know that you can look fantastic like anyone else with a little hard work, discipline, and whatnot, but not be overly huge and muscular. Now, bodybuilding competition is different than that. Bodybuilding is exactly what it sounds like. Whoever has the best physique, the best muscles is going to win, generally speaking. Whoever makes themselves look better than the rest of the people on the stage. And ultimately, it's decided by people who is not you. It's other people who decide how good a look you have compared to somebody else. And I've talked about before, and we've had bodybuilders on the show before, what that's like for them. A lot of people like Philip Ricardo Jr., the natural himself, he loves the bodybuilding world, the natural bodybuilding world. Jojo the bodybuilder, another bodybuilder who's actually gone out there and gone on stage and bodybuilded. He competed in competitions. But there are plenty of other people, like a Jaden Brooks, for example, who his key focus is not necessarily to be a bodybuilder, but just be in shape, healthy mind, body, and all around good health. And that's an important message too. His goals will be more of an entrepreneurship for just being healthy all around healthy. That's a different goal. They might work out the same and want the overall same results, but in the end of the game, Jojo the bodybuilder would like to be a bodybuilder, and Jaden Brooks just wants to be healthy and fit, to just have the overall health. It's a completely different end goal with the same kind of work ethic. And let me tell you, these two young men are tremendous at what they do. And I have to tell you, they both put in a lot of work to get there. It's not done overnight, and it's not done, accidentally. It's by the work ethic you put in to becoming who you are. That's ultimately what it comes down to. So there's that. So let's see. Everyone has different goals. For example, myself, growing up, I found at a young age that goals are very important and vital to me. And also a little bit, there's that certain feeling you get when you achieve a goal that makes you want to achieve more. Because you could always, achieve whatever the goal is and say, oh, well, I've accomplished that goal and I'm all done now. That's not generally how goals are made, and that's not how goals work. Ultimately, you make a goal, and then you continue with that goal to become even more, ultimately. That's ultimately how that works. So when we talk about, like, for example, me in school, for example, I talked before, and actually just not long ago I did a live, and I was talking about how one of my biggest goals in middle school was to not only graduate high school, but finish as good as I can, graduate with honors. Because it wasn't enough to just simply graduate high school. I had to graduate high school and then some. Because ultimately what I would end up doing is inviting the people who denied, the people who doubted, the people who said I would never amount to that, I would never finish that. I was people who doubted and tried to say that I was not going to be smart enough, I didn't have the discipline enough to finish school. And I went out of my way to prove them wrong. And from 7th grade till 12th grade, I was on the honor roll or high honor roll every single semester back to back. If you're ever wondering what the difference is between honor roll and high honor roll, ultimately it comes down to a minus or a plus when it comes to A's and B's. Ultimately, you can't get D's and F's to be on the honor roll. And you have to be at least a B and C. Nothing below a B plus ultimately would get you high honor roll, or honor roll rather. But if you're all A's in every class, that would honestly be high honors. So you're allowed a couple B's, B pluses if you are going for honor roll. You can have like one. In all honesty, I'll be the first to admit my B subject was always math. I'm not overly fond of math. Ultimately, I think it comes down to whatever class you can get into and what intrigues you. I can always find something fun in the other types of classes. For example, English and writing and history and things like that. I can always find prose to go with those, and I can always get something good out of that. History, I like learning about the past, and I like learning stories and so forth like that, and I also like to do research on these things. But also with that, excuse me, but what goes along with, that part of it is also the simple fact that, with, learning more, you obviously get better and you feel better about yourself, more knowledge. But when you do those, when I was doing, writing and history, in order to do a research paper, you have to be pretty good at English, and that's kind of where that came in. So I always enjoyed that. Creative writing was something I enjoyed, obviously, as the writer aspect of it. But I think a lot of people often say, why am I learning such and such? I'll never use this in life. Believe it or not, there are plenty of things that we do on a regular basis we use that we've learned in school. We just don't realize what it is we're learning. For example, a lot of people say they don't need calculus or algebra or things of that nature. But what if I was to tell you that you use it on a regular basis? For example, when you go to the store, how do you know how much 50% is off of something? Well, percentages and things of that nature is done by, percentages is decimals and things of that nature, and that's also where you get division and calculus and algebra all in one thing, because you got to know, well, how much is, if you have 4 pairs and they all weigh an ounce each, how much is the total ounces on this? Well, that's both an algebra problem, a mathematic problem. And why do you need to know that is if you're going food shopping, for example, you need to know how much it's going to cost when you get to the front of the register to know how much they're going to charge you for the total amount of how much it weighs. See how that works? So to all those people out there who say, I never need that, yeah, believe it or not, you do. Another one is I don't need to learn things like geometry. When am I going to need to know, the square root of a syllabus, or the square root of e equals 16 or whatever? Well, in retrospect, every day we use that too. All right, well, if we're driving down the street, how do we know what distance do we, if we're driving, for example, on a regular basis, or riding our bikes? At what voltage, at what point, if you're going on a bike, what point do you have to slow down so that if you have to stop, you have that that timing down? That's ultimately where that can come in. Or if you're playing sports, honestly, sports is probably the easiest way to look at where we need these things and these skills. For example, if you are someone who plays bowling or who bowls, you throw the ball, you have to line it up. In order to get that sound, you need to know, where the ball is going to go, what velocity you need to throw it in, and you need to have the exact, you have to have the right impact level in order to get that strike down the other thing, and what the velocity to hit it at. And that's ultimately why those things exist. And, now you learned. That's what that is. Same thing goes for pool, billiards. Doesn't sound like something very hardcore, or even bowling. No, not bowling, but soccer, or football for the world audience. What velocity do you have to kick the ball so it goes in the soccer net so it goes by the goalie? Ultimately, those are all geometry and physics and things of that nature. Basketball, same thing. Okay, if I throw this basketball and I'm standing over here in the corner, how high do I have to throw it? What's my percentage? How big is a basketball hoop? How big is a basketball? What's the, different things? These are all mathematical equations to play basketball. So for all those people out there who say, I never need any of these things in school, well, I just gave you some basic ideas and basic principles of, if you've done any of these activities, you've done the things you've learned in school. These are where you know how to get these things done, regardless if you know it or not. And now you know. So there's that. And the same thing goes for measurements. Like if you're cooking, for example, at some point in life you're going to have to cook for yourself or prepare food for yourself or someone else. And you need to know, like, how many ounces of such and such do I have to add to whatever. Well, then, the things might tell you, yeah, this is what you need, but if you don't know how to read that number, how do you know which measuring cup? For example, if you have a recipe that asks for half a cup of something, but you only grab the 3/4, the 1/3 measuring spoon, you obviously don't have enough of whatever it is to make whatever it is. If you only use 1/3 of it, that means you haven't got a half. If something calls for a full cup of something and you're only using half a cup, even that could throw something off. So that's where, again, on a regular basis, you use mathematics. In all honesty, cooking takes mathematics. How long do I have to cook this for? This turkey, for example, or chicken. This chicken weighs X amount of pounds. How long do I have to cook it for? Well, average turkey cooks, you have to cook an average turkey for, a couple, 20 minutes a pound, say, or 5 minutes a pound. And if it's a 20-pound bird, then you obviously need to know how many hours it has to cook for. Same thing goes for, that's how you cook turkey and so you don't get sick. Because trust me, things like pork, chicken, things of that nature, if you undercook it, you can get sick pretty bad, and you will regret it. Trust me on that. You will definitely regret not having the right, cooking style. Not only will you go to eat your chicken that may not be cooked properly, but you might also get sick with salmonella or some other disease, which you don't want. So that's where you need those simple things. But, one of the other things is someone asked me, my kids actually asked me a lot, because they didn't go to my high school. They've often asked me, when you do the high school graduation commencement speech, which I've done now, I kind of lost track, to be honest with you. I've been back at least, I want to say, I graduated year 1999, and since 1999 I've been back probably close to 14 times or 15 times, and they asked me again to come back again this year. So this will be my either 15th or 16th time doing the commencement speech for my high school. And one of the questions people ask me, well, what do you talk about? One is, a lot of people I find don't even like getting up in front of people and telling a speech. So sometimes they get questions on how do I go about, standing in front of all these people to talk like I do? How do I get that comfortable to be in front of, thousands of people at any given time and not, get nervous or trip over myself? Well, honestly, it comes down with practice, years of practice and dedication. But I have my tricks of the trade, which I'm going to give to you guys so to help you guys with those things. But also, as far as why do I do it, I think it's important to, do our parts to let people know the graduates of today, they're ultimately going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And then it's going to be their turn to pass their time off to the next class and so forth. And it's our jobs to make sure that they know what to expect. My wife and I always agree with being open and honest with our kids, and we never hold anything back from them. And if they ask us questions, we answer them as best we can. When, even now they're asking us questions, and we need to be able to give them proper answers. And ultimately, when I give my speeches, the commencement speech, for example, one of the biggest things that I like to tell the kids is about the Monday after graduation. Now, why a Monday? Well, here you go. You see, most graduation ceremonies do take place on a weekend. Why? I don't really know, to be honest with you. But for the most part, I believe it has to do with the fact that since it's on a weekend, people have the time off. The teachers and usually the special guests that they can come, the politicians or people like myself, it usually works better for them. But also, it's just, better for families to have that kind of a time. Now, that's not to say they might have a graduation ceremony, say, in the middle of the week for seniors. Because remember, seniors actually get out before everyone else in high school. So that's a fun fact about graduation. So if you're someone who's going to graduate high school, then you definitely don't have to go to school as long as someone who's, say, a freshman or a sophomore. Because Basically, once you graduate, you're all done. Graduates have to get all your teachers to sign off on your if you can graduate, if you can graduate, the first part. Then the second part of that is you have to be able to deliver what you need to in order to do so. For example, being able to, doing random things. Basically in the middle of the week. Usually, seniors have a half a day anyway. But, usually you have your teachers all sign off saying that you've completed all your courses and you're finished up with that senior, with that study. Ultimately, you do that again in college, for the record. And then you also have to, submit your thesis in college. It's a little different than high school. High school is by far probably easier of the two. But a little different. And it also depends on what you're studying, too, and what that final report looks like, you see. See, in high school, you got to go through all that stuff. And then one of the questions I get from people is, why graduate? Why put yourself through all that? Well, in all fairness, it's not rocket science, you see. You can either, you've already come that far. If you've already gotten to high school, let's say you're a junior or a senior. In your senior year, you decide, well, I've done enough. I don't really want to finish high school. All honesty, the sound you're going to hear after hearing this spell, you probably are going to be destined to hear this sound for the rest of your life. I know that sounds funny. I get that. So you can go, once that final school bell rings, that's when your life really begins. That's when your real adulthood, life after high school, begins. Which is why I usually talk about the Monday after graduation. Because usually most graduation ceremonies, as I mentioned, are done on the weekend. But ultimately, it's the first time Monday will come along when you're at that point that all the work you put in, all of the hours of doing your homework and doing all of the studies you have had to do, all of those annoying tests you had to do, all the pop quizzes, all of the knowledge that you've basically had to secure for the last, since most of us start school either in kindergarten or first grade. Look at all of that time you've already put into graduating or put into the school system already. And if you think that school is just a bunch of nonsense, something to do for the day, if you really want to know the truth, and the thing I usually point out to people is ultimately what school is a test and gives you prepares you for what your next role in life is. It's really to get you ready for adulthood. Believe it or not so much, reading and writing and arithmetic, but getting you used to what your role is going to be as an adult and as a person who's going to make decisions for the economy, for the world, for yourselves, for your families. And ultimately, it's the things the work ethic you learn in school is ultimately going to dictate what you're going to do with the rest of your life. Are you someone who kind of skates by in school right now? Someone who doesn't take school seriously? Well, do you take your life seriously? Really, no joke. It's serious now. If you look at life and look at, if you are annoyed at if you think, for example, most jobs you go to work 9 to 5. Most school times start from 7 to 3 or 7 to 2. Ultimately, that gives you that feeling. It kind of gets you ready for what's to come when you work for a living. Can you work from 7 to 5 or 7 to 2? Because ultimately, if you can't work 9 to 5 5 days a week at least, you're not going to be able to make enough money to support yourself or your family. And ultimately, that's your goal. That's what school's giving you, is those tools to learn. How do you endure those hard days when you're tired and you're exhausted? Well, ultimately, ask anyone who's ever gone to work what that's like. Someone who's worked 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, which is generally speaking what the average norm is for most people who work in a 9 to 5 job. And depending on what the job is, some jobs are harder than others. And ultimately, school gives you the ability to kind of adapt to those environments. It also gives you a kind of an idea of knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are. For example, if you're someone like me who is not huge into math, I can't stand math, but I can do math. But if that's not something you're passionate about and you're more into something like writing or, some other thing, then you're probably going to want to pursue something that's outside of something that uses math a lot. Excuse me, folks. Clearing my throat, which is a lot of fun. And yes, I am drinking water, folks, in case you're wondering. But, for example, obviously for math, I wouldn't want to either be someone who works in chemistry, even though I did enjoy that, as it's a science, but it's also a math, and I'm not really someone who likes to sit there and play with measurements all day and deal with equations and so forth on a regular basis. Maybe being someone who works in budgeting or works in some type of a job where you have to either count or do a lot of math, like being an accountant or being someone who handles in a bank, that's probably not an environment made for me. I'm probably more of a let's get work done, creative, physical, manual labor kind of a thing, or some other type of avenue. For example, my skills lie heavily in writing, for example. Let's say, someone who is good in English and writing, creative writing and history and so forth. Well, those skills ultimately gave me an opportunity to become a writer that I am now. It gave me the ability to be a storyteller. I could adapt that into pro wrestling. I could adapt that into filmmaking. And that's ultimately where those skills come from, and that's where that's where they belong. Even on a movie set, for example, you can see the different jobs that you would entail based upon what someone's strength was in school. Someone whose strength was in more math, they might be more into the financing part of the project. Someone like myself, who was more on the creative side, the writing and the creating and whatever, they might be more of the directorial or the writer or the producer kind of a thing. Then you get the people who just kind of want to perform. These are people who maybe did well in debate club or science or performance, dramatics, and so forth. In the like math or gym or things of that nature. Well, that's where the actors come from, because you can get a knack for a lot of those things in those kinds of classes. So ultimately, what school does really is prepares you for what is to come in your adulthood, especially high school. High school has your 9 to, I think most places 7 to say 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and most adults work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. School is when? 7 to say 2 or 3 Monday through Friday. Most schools aren't open on weekends here in the United States, but there may be some few and far between that are. Other parts of the country and other parts of the world, they don't have necessarily high school. They have, most countries, they're out of school when I think they're done complete with school. They're 13 years old. And what we consider to be high school, they consider to be what they call university, which is a different avenue than what we talk. Here in the United States, we look at universities and colleges as the same thing. Other parts of the country, other parts of the world, they don't look at it like that. They look as, they have other different academics and skill sets and so forth that they learn. Now, I think what's interesting, and I do have to point this out, and like I tell people, history, as far as history goes and social studies, I mean, this subject has multiple different titles and multiple different classes. You can have the same class called multiple different things, whether it be social studies, life science, earth history, cultural differences, whatever they want to call the course. It's all the same, kind of teaching you about the history of different cultures and so forth. I don't necessarily know if I would agree that people in the United States, for example, should be teaching the histories of cultures that we are not actually involved with, because ultimately it's up to assumptions or people who are from, word of mouth or things of that nature, and sometimes that can be disastrous. I think also when it comes to history of the United States even, you have to maybe sometimes look at some things as best intentions, I guess you'd say. I have to be honest with you guys. When I was in high school when I learned about some of the traditions that the United States celebrates, and I was actually shocked by some aspects of it, like Columbus Day. When I actually looked at the real Christopher Columbus and actually looked at the whole story, and the more that I did the research, the more I found myself kind of baffled by what I was learning that they don't teach us in school. They teach us about how Christopher Columbus, in 1672, sailed the ocean blue. The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, his 3 ships, how he found America. We celebrate him every year around the same time. In all honesty, when you look at what Christopher Columbus actually did, he may have very well traveled these seas, and he very well might have, sailed those 3 boats. He was not the first person to come into this country. We already had people living here. And also, he is not the first visitor to come from outside of the United States. Well, we know of the United States now compared to whatnot. And not to mention the fact, when he did get here, 1, he didn't even know where he was. And 2, not only when he didn't know where he was, he also then tried to force the people who lived there to live and be the way he wanted them to be, which ultimately is the biggest thing that Christopher Columbus is actually known for outside of the United States. And here in America, we celebrate him on what they call Columbus Day. And I have to tell you that in our house, we do not celebrate Columbus Day, because in doing my research, I learned that this is not someone we should be celebrating. But you can't break traditions. School, my teachers wanted to expel me for writing the paper that I wrote. They couldn't expel me because, 1, I learned about the Constitution in both government and social studies, is where we learn the Constitution, which is the Bill of Rights, in which all countries have such a thing, laws and rules that your country sets upon. And the Constitution of the United States basically gave me the freedom and the right to be able to both write whatever I wanted, but also because I wrote the piece, because I wrote the research paper, and I had to show where I learned it from, and I had to show they call it a bibliography when you tell them where you read all the information from. And because it was all done accurately, they had no choice but to give me my A for writing the paper. It was well written. It was well informative. What upset them is the fact that when I did these reports, I had to read them in front of the class. It basically was kind of like pulling back the curtain and basically underselling what they had been teaching us all up until that point. Now today, I think more people have caught on to that whole thing. And I think now a lot of people call it Indigenous Day, in tribute to the Native Americans, in which Columbus basically did not so nice things to, and basically kicked out of their own world and kind of imprisoned them in their own country. So ultimately what Columbus did. Not someone you want to celebrate, in my opinion. So, there's that. But you see, folks, it's what school teaches us. It shows us how to get to where we need to be. As adults, if we need to know how to get a house, if we need to know how to get a car, if we want to learn those things, what school does is gives us that homework, how to learn outside of our work. So we have our regular 9-to-5 job, but what homework does is gives us the ability to take our what we learn in school outside of it. For example, if you're looking for a car in modern times, you don't know. You're like, well, how does that get you ready for? What does having to go to high school have to do with you getting a car in the adult world? Well, when you have to do when you're getting ready to go for a final, you get ready for a test. In order to get your mark and do well in it, you have to do what? Your research, right? Do a book report. You got to look at what you want. You got to look at the facts of all of the things included. And then that's how you make a decision on what car you're going to buy. How much money do you have? Are you going to finance it? Are you not going to finance it? Are you going to put money down? How do I get the money? What kind of a thing do you want to do for life? Do you want to have a family? Do you want to be by yourself? Because these are the decisions that will ultimately help you decide what car you're going to buy. For example, a family person, a person who's interested in having a wife and children, is probably not going to look at a Ferrari Testarossa or something that only has a 2-seat car, because that would be economically ridiculous. Why? Well, because one, only 2 people could fit in the car, you and maybe a significant other, or you and one of your kids, if you have more than one kid. But you, your wife, and your kid cannot fit in the same car. And that's why it's not necessarily a family car. It's for someone who's maybe a single person or a bachelor or someone who's not interested in having a family. And again, if that's someone who you are, that is something that is the case, and you know that to be the truth. That you learn that in high school. Are you a loner in high school? Do you like to associate with other people? Is this something you enjoy? That'll help you with those decisions. If you're someone in high school who likes to kind of be away from everybody else, you may do that at first in life as well, outside of that. But I can tell you that as much as you don't think you need people, eventually you are going to let some people into your world. It's just going to be up to you to decide who. And again, this is where school comes in. For example, in school, you're going to have a class. Let's say your homeroom class. Are you going to be friends with everyone in your homeroom class? Realistically, probably not. Realistically, there's going to be the ones you're going to talk to, the ones you say hi to, the ones who you kind of stay away from, and then the ones who are just kind of there, right? Well, in life, you have the same thing outside of school. You have that at work. You have the people you work at work that you talk to, the ones you don't talk to, the ones you say hi to, and then there's the ones you just avoid altogether. That's like in work. It's the same thing everywhere. But what you have to learn is respect of each other in the homeroom class, right? You can't really give the person who you don't get along with a hard time the whole time, because you're going to get in trouble, right? Well, in work, if you give that kid a hard time, or that person you're not getting along with a hard time like you would in high school, in high school you'd probably get suspended or something of that nature. In work, you'll be fired and you'll lose your job and you won't have money, and that's where the issues come in. So ultimately what school does, it gets you ready for, high school especially, gets you ready for the next chapter, which is adulthood. You go to school for X amount of time, that's because of your work. Now at work, now this is where school has won up on work. You see, at work, once you figure out what it is you're going to do, that's what you do the whole time you're there. In school, at least, you can do multiple different things. Again, a lot of that is because in work you might have to face several different things in one position. For example, let's say I am working in a movie theater. Okay, I'm working in a movie theater and I am a box office cashier. Now, what skills do I need from high school am I going to need to be a box office cashier? Well, one, I have to be able to read so I can see the show times and so forth. I need the computer skills to be able to learn what buttons to push and whatnot. I need mathematics skills because I need to know how much, change to give back to someone and how little, whatever else that, whatever happens there. I also have to have basic, common sense. If the person in front of me looks like they're, too old or too young for a film, then I need to address that. And these are where problem solving comes into play, right? So in a box office shift at a movie theater, you actually use several different classes you'll learn in high school. English, you have to write down your, transactions maybe. You have to write down things. You have to learn how to hold coupons. That's where a lot of the other classes will help you in school. So ultimately, if you look at it like that, whatever your job is outside of school, that's ultimately what school gives you. And at one job, you might actually have to use each of those subjects in one class, in one life, in one day. And you do it 5 days a week because most people work not 5 days a week, generally. But I can tell you from experience that sometimes you work more than that. Sometimes you work weekends. And that's where school activities come into play. And making sure that you have good time management. Can you work and have a good time after that? Absolutely. Can you still have time with your friends? Yes, you can. You just need to know when and how to do so. For example, let's say you work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You're off on weekends. Well, that means you have Saturday and Sunday off. And you can do a couple things. Either one, you can make Saturday and Sunday a day of rest, or one of the two. That's the day you can do your homework, your chores you have to do in your house. But the other thing, that gives you an opportunity to do something social with your friends. Maybe go out for a coffee or a drink with someone if that's something you enjoy. Maybe there's a show at the weekend. But also, if you're someone who is over a certain age and so forth, and you choose to go to, say, a show during the week. Now, this is where the illusion of being an adult, a lot of kids see that, well, you're an adult, you can do whatever you want. Well, in theory, but also like any other person, we have to accept the consequences for what we choose to do. Like, for example, if you're a high schooler and your parents get upset because you didn't come home on time, well, why is that? Well, if you don't get up for school the next day, you're going to be late for school, and that's going to throw everything off of yourself. You're going to get a tardy. You're probably going to get a detention. And now, because you got a detention, you might not be able to go to your school, your sports meet, or whatever you're doing after school. It's going to go on your report, and people are going to know you to be someone who is kind of lazy and late for things, and you're not dependable. That's ultimately how an employer will look at you. If you're always late getting up for work, you're maybe someone who got late getting for school in the morning. So you see how school really does get us ready for the real world? You need to get up and go to school so you know that you can get up and go to work. That's ultimately what you're changing, one for the other. And that's why it's okay to take a little while to figure out what it is you want to do. Some people, they go to college, so they fill that void with more school to work on their long-time goal outside of school, if that makes any sense. So once they're done with high school, they might go to college to become more sufficient at whatever their goal is in life. Because ultimately, if you go to college, you do have some type of goal going forward, whether it be acting, directing, whether it be in the entertainment world, in the financial world, in the health world, the legal world. There is something you're trying to accomplish, which is when you go to college to fine-tune whatever that is you want to study. For example, if you're someone who wants to be a doctor, you got to go to regular school, then you got to go to med school, and it might take you longer than other professions. Same thing for a lawyer. Lawyers and doctors go the longest than any other profession, But that's because you have to know everything about whatever it is you're getting into. If you're a doctor, you need to learn about every single illness, how to fix every illness. You need to learn about how to do all kinds of things. And ultimately, it's going to take a lot of commitment, a lot of hard work, dedication to become a doctor or a lawyer. So that's something people should be aware of. But then there are other professions that don't take as long for school but can still be meaningful, like a teacher. Teachers don't generally need to go to school for as long as you'd think, but generally speaking, they'll kind of master into one different subject, and that's kind of when that's the subject ultimately they'll teach. And then, there's other professions like acting, directing, things like that. Like me, for example. I got a film degree and I have a human services degree. That's completely different realms of things. With one degree, I can make films and television and so forth. I can do that part. But with the other degree, I can work as a therapist, a psychotherapist, or a counselor, or something of that nature with other humans to help them with different conflicts they might have. That's ultimately what my 2 degrees give me the ability to do. And ultimately, they did take a lot of time, but since I had the time to do while I was injured, I was able to fulfill those. Does that make sense? Cool. But that also has to do with the whole Monday after graduation, because ultimately, a lot of people don't understand sometimes what that's going to be until it happens. That's ultimately why I give the speech that I do, and why I bring it up in the commencement speech is the Monday after graduation, because up until that point, it was customary during the school season, like clockwork. You're up, get ready, go to school, do your schoolwork, come home, repeat, right? Do what you got to do. Same routine over and over again. But when Monday comes along and you're no longer in high school, there's no more commitment to go there, then what do you do then? What does Monday look like for you? Some people, like I said, they go to other school or they go to work. Most people in high school and senior year are already working some type of job. Maybe they'll take more hours, and they'll supplement the school with the work. That's ultimately what that's for. But I guess the moral of the story is, it's really a good idea once you get to be a senior year of high school to really figure out what it is you want to do. And if you don't figure it out by the time that Monday after comes off, that's okay. It might take a little longer, but just know, eventually, that gets old. Because most likely your friends have already kind of figured out what they're going to do. Other people are already working on whatever they're going to be doing. And ultimately, it's also the people who we meet in high school will teach us what we're going to have to look forward to in the rest of our lives. The kinds of people we associate with will also dictate how successful we are and ultimately, what kind of people we're going to be. If you're someone who needs to follow what everyone else does, then you're a follower, and that means that, basically as long as everyone else is doing it, you're going to go along with it too. You have no mind of your own. Let everyone else decide what you're going to do. And if that's someone who you are, there are people like that. I don't necessarily think you're going to be happiest to be a follower. But then there are those who just take the bull by the horns and go out there and make a goal and go for it. These are usually the kids who are, have something going in high school. For example, someone who's into politics. The kids who run for office, generally speaking, that's something they're probably going to pursue later in life. Same thing goes for other types of things. Now, someone who is in high school to be an athlete. Okay, cool. If that's something your ambition is, then you will probably need more college, I would imagine, to join or to, most people get what they call a scholarship from various schools to play sports for their team. But what you don't know, or you should know, because you've already put the time in high school, is you're going to have to obviously keep your grades up in college just as much as in high school, if not even more so, because that's kind of how you continue to grow as an athlete and as a student of the college. And if you're struggling academically in college, there is no do-overs. There's no takeover class. You paid for college, and you're losing money by not going to school or class. Because, I mean, ultimately, your college is defined by who you are as well. If you're someone who, wants to, like I said, be an athlete, and your job is you want to be a football player, say. I'm talking about American football now. You want to be who? Tom Brady? Okay. You want to be Tom Brady. Well, you got to go to high school, a regular school. You got to do pretty well with that. You got to keep your grades up. And then you got to go to college and play some more football. And you got to keep your grades up some more. And then if you get drafted, like Tom Brady, who was number 10th in the pick that year. That's right, folks. Tom Brady was not picked number 1. He was picked like 10th in the overall draft, last, if you would. And when they picked him, he was a backup quarterback, and he didn't get his chance to play until later in life. And at that point, we all know, and a lot of people respect Tom Brady now as the football player he was, but there was a lot of work that had to help him get there. He had to keep his grades up and everything else to get him to where he is today. And a lot of people who say, well, what about these basketball players who go from, right from high school to the NBA? Well, that is true. Sometimes you have the rare athlete who goes from high school to whatever the sport is, but you got to also realize if the athlete had done that, then that also means that they must have been able to, do the at least bare minimum of the commitment to whatever the class is to, graduate the school. In order to play high school, pro sports, you have to have enough at least knowledge in the sport. You can't just walk into the NBA team and just say, I want to play for you. That's not how that works. Ultimately, you have to be drafted. There are sometimes tryouts, but there are going to be people there who have gone to college, who have done things in sports that have, proof behind all of it. If you're just someone who's just going to show up off nowhere, say, yeah, I'm going to play for, whatever team you're on, just because I might have thought about being a basketball player. That's not how that works. Generally, people who want to play basketball have already played basketball in high school or some type of sport in high school that, kind of, they like that competition piece. They like that athletic contest. They like the various things that go into that. They like that, overall modern, because ultimately you are awarded with things right away in sports. You get trophies and acknowledgments and so forth. You can get scholarships for that. But what people need to understand is the likelihood of becoming Tom Brady and the likelihood of becoming Babe Ruth or any of these people who we admire in their sport is even they had a backup. The ones who went to college, for example, they have something else to fall back on. And take it from this guy, from me, my experience, I was awarded 3 scholarships in high school. One was actually not one of them was not for athletics. It was actually for my creativity and my writing. I was awarded a grant. I was also awarded a grant for my human services project that I was working for. So I was awarded 3 different scholarships in high school. Ultimately, I didn't take any at that point because I already had started practicing and already went to wrestling school because that was my first goal. But I also knew that there were other things and interests I had. So pro wrestling is my first goal and my first objective. What if I get injured? Well, in all honesty, I didn't even think about that until it was my trainer in wrestling who told me that. What are you going to do if you get injured? You need to have a backup. And that's when what else can I do? I also like to help people. And I've done that since high school. My high school had a human services department where I learned basic sociology and psychology, which I was fascinated by. I do generally like to help other people. I genuinely do care about other people. I mean, I'm the F4L leader for a reason. And then on top of that, there were other aspects as well. Like, then I would learn. I also liked, entertainment. I like to write. So filmmaking and writing and helping others are all things that I enjoyed. So when I got injured in 2003, I said, okay, well, since I'm not going to be able to work in the gym as much as I was, because let me tell you, that's a commitment. I was always in the gym, working out hard. From age of 13, I was in the gym. Outside of everything else I was doing, that was always something I enjoyed as well. I leave these things out of this show because these are just things that are common for people who want to do these kinds of passions. But at 13, I was lifting weights. I was always in the gym. And because I only mentioned it now, you were like, well, where did this come from? No, it was there the whole time. Everything I mentioned that I did outside of that, gym is always part of all of that. Being in the gym is something I've left room for. It's just part of who I am, just like writing. I've also mentioned that I was writing the Friendar series since I was 11 years old, and that is also true. Friendar was a short story series I started writing when I was 11 years old, as I just mentioned. And honestly, it didn't end until 2019. And that wasn't until recently. So that's a long time to write a short story saga. But I didn't bring that up because it wasn't vital to the idea. But ultimately, that's the kind of the individual I am. There are multiple things that I was doing while I was on my path to where I was going. But you see how each of these things kind of played out. See the creative side and the wrestling side, and ultimately all of these things made me a better performer in the ring, but also made me a better, and athletic-wise, I mean on the soccer field, the swim team, the wrestling squad, as we called it in school. I mean, in the martial arts I did outside of that. These are things that kind of helped give me those skills to being who I am. And they all come with their own different baggage and their own different lessons, if you would. But in hindsight, a lot of people ask me, well, what did you learn in wrestling school? Just how to throw people around? Well, most important, part of their teaching is the fundamentals of pro wrestling, how to bump so you don't kill yourself or others. Yes, that's part of it. But also, there's a psychological part of it, the mental part of it, the performance part of it, the business side of things. How do I reach an audience? How do I get the audience engaged? How do I negotiate a contract? How do I, different basic things like that. What can I do outside of the wrestling world if this happens? How do I, tell a great promo? How do I sell, a storyline? These are all things that you have to learn in wrestling school that you would adapt into your career as a pro wrestler. But I would adapt those things to a lot of other aspects of my life. I can take the same lessons I learned about business ethic and use that towards anything I do in life. For example, the work ethic I had in the gym, where I was in the gym ridiculous amount of times, working out, lifting weights, and all those things. And then I adapt that into these different elements. Well, now when I graduate high school, I'm in the best shape of my life. I look fantastic. I have the pectoral muscle, and now people look at me and like, well, now what happened to all that? I mean, I was 19 first and foremost. It was a long time ago. And since then, I've been injured, and your body generally changes over the time anyway. But I still have that work ethic. How do you know that? Well, look at my current everyday living. I get up early in the morning. I jam-pack my day with all kinds of things. I go for a walk every single day, no matter what I fit in. I do my calisthenics every single day for a time period. I don't tell you guys all these things. I don't show all these things because that's just not what I do. I grew up in an era before social media, and I don't need others to tell me if I'm doing my body justice. I don't need others to tell me how does my arms look, how does my legs look, because ultimately I don't care what others' opinions of me are. If I am satisfied with me or if I'm not, that's what it comes down to. And I think a lot of people sometimes when it comes to things like that, and they worry about what other people are going to tell them, and what other people are dictating for them, that calls back into that thing we talked about earlier, where other people are going to doubt me if I'm going to finish school. Well, it doesn't matter what they say. It matters what I believe and what I do. See how that works? If these are the same kind of people they would see me in a wrestling match or they would see me on the soccer field and they say, well, clearly, our football team, our American football team is going to beat you soccer players in a game of soccer because we're big, strong football players. That's a real story, and they found out real quick that that's not necessarily how soccer works. And they found out just how, at a disadvantage they were because of the fact that they didn't run like we do. They didn't have the conditioning we did. Football is a different sport than soccer, or football to the world's audience. American football is probably resembles more of rugby than it does, world calls soccer, football. Well, what the world calls football, we call soccer in America. But in all honesty, a lot of people who play American football look at soccer players like they were weak. And I've talked about that before. And the story I'm telling you, I told you before about I just roped it in here too, is, the football players, before that game, they thought that, we were a bunch of, sissies. We couldn't play as hard as they were, and we were weak. But at the end of the game, they had nothing but respect for all of us. And that's a true statement. After the game, we all had to shake hands as part of soccer tradition. And when doing so, they had the utmost respect for us because they realized that it's a different element. They weren't prepared for it. Soccer and football are different sports. Soccer is maybe if you want a different person to come in, you have to get a replacement player. You do have people who are on the bench that can come in and step in for a break. However, that's all you get is that one person. Football is done by lines, right? Defensive line and defense and offensive line, right? Soccer's not done that way. You have the same, 6 people, 7, you have the same amount of people out there the entire game. You just switch one person out for one at a time. And that's why I think the football players had the most respect for us because they found out just how much goes in and how much endurance you need. Plus, they had to play in their football pads. We had to play in our soccer cleats and our shin pads because that's what soccer players wear. The football players had to wear their football equipment. So they had to run for nonstop in the football equipment. So this is why I say, these are all life lessons, you see, folks. And again, this comes down full circle. These are the lessons you see growing up that you would adapt to your everyday life. And that instance right there, all those football players had respect for the soccer team, which is why they never questioned it again. And it was never a rematch because they didn't want any part of that. So that's a true statement, a true story. It was a lovely story that it was. But in retrospect, and in hindsight, Monday after graduation is ultimately your decision what you do. And by that point, you've pretty much already figured that out, I would imagine. And I think what you have to do in high school, for those people who haven't figured it out yet, is look around your circle and where do you fit into that circle? Are you the leader, the follower? Are you just there? Are you a slacker? Are you a hardworking, dedicated sports athlete? Are you a hardworking, dedicated academics person? Are you a kind of an all-around person like me? And it's okay to be any of those. But what you have to understand is the kind of person you're going to be in high school could dictate who you're going to be in your adult life. If you slack off in high school, you're probably going to slack off on the job. And if you slack off on the job, you're not going to get suspended. You're not going to get, points taken off. You're not going to get A's, B's, and D's. You're going to get not paid and fired. And ultimately, you won't be able to make a living. You won't be able to make money. You can't support yourself, your family, or anything else. And ultimately, that is the consequence of your action. And this is what school gets you guys ready for. But that's the stories I tell people on the podium. And all of them are true. Is that Monday after graduation, some people are nervous, some people are anxious. Now, to be fair, nervous and anxious are two different things in this case. Nervous is, I don't know what I'm going to do, almost panic mode. Anxious is, I know what I want to do, and let's just get this done. And then there's the people who just don't care, the lethargic people. Well, Monday's going to come, it's going to come. These are the kinds of people who don't have a direction yet. It might take you a little longer. But ultimately, these are people who, are going to struggle with a lot of things down the road in their lifetime. So just remember those things. And just remember that at the end of the day, no matter what you choose to do, you're going to have to deal with one key factor, and that is the fact that it's going to circle back to, what do you believe you're going to do? Who do you want to be in your life? That's what it comes down to. And like me, for example, in the beginning of the 7th grade, before the 7th grade started, I said, not only am I going to graduate high school, I'm going to graduate high school with honors. And then when I'm done, I'm going to invite you to my high school graduation ceremony. Now, if you're wondering why I would do that, if you're ever wondering, why would I invite people who didn't believe in me to my high school graduation, you might think, yeah, that is kind of funny, right? You might think that I'm a clown for, inviting them to my high school graduation. However, I didn't. I had a very different approach, because when it came down to it, when this bell rang for the last time, it was them, the people who doubted me, who then had to hear this. That's right. They had to sit there and listen to that. And that, to me, was worth more, because they would have no choice but to accept the fact that, in fact, it was them who were the clowns. And it was me who crossed the finish line and achieved my first goal of destination, graduation. And that was the idea. That's why I invited them to my high school graduation, because they had to sit there with the entire town as they called off my name, graduating 14th in class of a class of 1,500 students. I graduated 14th because my last name begins with an S. National Honor Society, 1999. And this is why, in the years since then, I've been back to my high school to give this speech that has changed over the years. First during the a couple of years ago, there was no ceremony. And I always feel that they get cheated because I feel like there's no better feeling than initially walking across that stage or whatever you're doing to get that diploma, because all of that hard work, the dedication that you put in, all of those years from kindergarten, all the ups, the downs, the turmoil you went through, the tests you went through, the whatever you went through in all of those school years, when you crossed that stage, you achieved all of that. That was what that was worth. All of that was worth this moment that is culminated by getting a diploma that says you have not only survived this, but you have done it well. And you've done it with respect of your work, your dedication. It is you who got you to graduate, no one else, at the end of the day. It is your accomplishments that got you to graduate when you did. It is you who put the work into graduating. So many other people do not graduate. Some people don't finish school at all. Some people choose to get a GED. It's easier. There is no easy way out in life. There's no cheat sheet in life. You can't go to a job and ask them for a do-over. You can't go on to a job site and ask them if you can do something else in another way. That doesn't work that way. And ultimately, in life, you will achieve what you want. Because when you get a high school diploma, that proves that your hard work, your dedication, and all of that commitment you put into it at that point has been culminated with this diploma. It says that all of that work you have done alone, and you have achieved this. That's what that diploma signifies. Any way you get it. So that's something to be proud of, which is why I think it's ultimately the greatest feeling ever. So that is Motivation Monday, folks. That is the overall idea of getting you ready for what's next. Today is Monday. And did you graduate over the weekend? And what is your Monday looking like? Are you still in bed? Or are you on your way to a job interview? Are you looking for a job? Are you preparing to pack and get ready for college in the fall? Are you getting ready for a trip to signify and celebrate all of your accomplishments? Monday after graduation looks differently for everybody, but ultimately, everyone faces it eventually. And ultimately, it's a different feeling and a different outcome each time. It's up to you to decide what Tuesday looks like, what Wednesday looks like, and so forth for the rest of your life. So, there's that part. So, that will conclude this part of the program. Let us get back to other parts. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. What I want to do right now is take a moment to celebrate all of the mothers out there, all the mother-like people out there. The other day, I had started part one of our Mother's Day celebration. I began writing a Mother's Day poem that is almost done, not done yet, I'm still working on it. But what I wanted to ultimately do is make sure people realize why we celebrate Mother's Day and how important it is to do so. A lot of people take time with people for granted, especially our moms. And trust me, I get it. Sometimes moms have this ability to call either at the very worst time or right when you need them most. Moms have that ability. They either call you right at the lowest point. They'll call you and check up on you and say, hey, whenever the worst comes up. Or you're in the middle of you're ready to get something important done, some type of activity, maybe you're getting ready for an event, maybe going out on a date, and that's when mom will call. And so many people, and I have to say, even me included, will see that number come across the screen. It'll say mom. It'll flash, and whatever your ring messages, whatever your dial tone is, will decide what kind of a mom relationship you have with her. But ultimately, that name flashes on your screen, and then you have a decision. Do you answer the phone call, or do you continue on with your day and call her back later with the intention? Or do you just call her, or do you just ignore the call altogether and not call at all? Well, here's something I wanted to give you guys an idea about, something to think about. Because take it from someone who does understand what that means. Take it from someone who has had the opportunity to have a conversation with my mother on the phone many times and can honestly tell you that there definitely is a certain element of annoyances that come with some of the things that our moms do. And they can be annoying, sure, calling us out of the blue, and they might want to talk for anywhere from a quick minute or two to a couple hours because they miss us. They want to know what's going on in our world. They want to tell us what's going on in theirs. They want to interact with us because moms, what you don't understand is moms and dads, their jobs are never truly done. They're always going to worry about you. They're always going to want to be part of your lives. They're always going to miss you. You're always going to be their babies. That's never going to change in their eyes. I can tell you that because now I'm on the opposite spectrum of that. I am a dad now, and not a day goes by that I'm not constantly thinking about my kids or worried about my kids or whatnot. But moms are a little different because moms have that connection with their kids, generally speaking, that goes beyond what sometimes fathers have, even sometimes deeper than what fathers have because of that personal connection that they have, generally speaking. Now, again, to be clear, not everyone necessarily has to be born into the Brady Bunch kind of a family lifestyle. I definitely was not. But it's about who you have around you and what your mom are, who are the people you make your moms. Everyone has that mother-like figure. If it's not your actual mother, then maybe it's an aunt you're close to. Maybe it's a family friend who you're very close with. Everyone has someone who they look to as that role, because that's just human nature. But here's something I want you to think about. For the person who has the phone ring and the screensaver says mom calling, and you're given that opportunity, do I answer this call and take this for a few minutes, or do I just let it ring, get the voicemail, I'll just call her later? Well, let's be honest. If you see her number come up on your screen and you choose to ignore the call, number one, your mom's going to call you back until she calls you, most likely. She's going to call until she gets an answer, most likely. But think of this. That, as annoying as it is to have your mom call you at all these times, and then you have the opportunity to either take the call or not, imagine what's going to feel like when that call doesn't come on at all anymore. Because that's something no one ever thinks about, generally speaking. Much like, anything in life, no one's guaranteed anything. And if you're someone who says, well, mom's calling me, I'm going to take care of X, Y, and Z, and I'll call her back. So I'm going to deny this call, and I'll call her back later. And then later, you might have the greatest intention ever to call her back. And then sometimes things come up. I'll call her back in 10 minutes. 10 minutes comes up, and something else comes up. And then you might say, well, mom's calling me. I don't have time to call right now. I'll call her tomorrow. Well, tomorrow comes, and then something comes up that you have to move it till the next day, or maybe next week, maybe next month, maybe next April, whatever the case may be. What you need to understand is no one's guaranteed tomorrow, and that there's a good possibility that if your mom's calling you right there, and then if you don't answer the phone call, you may never get to talk to her again. Tomorrow might not come. You might not get the option to not deny her call because she won't be able to call you tomorrow or the next day or next month. And as morbid as that may sound, that's the reality of that decision. Because ultimately you don't know what tomorrow brings. Our moms can be fit as a fiddle and be healthiest people alive. Anything can happen at any point to you or to her that are outside of our realm, outside of our being, outside of our control. My mother, for example, I've told this story before, and it's actually coming up, and I'm going to be doing another show closer to the 23rd. But my mother came down for a housewarming party of mine. She was with me for a week. And during that week, she tried smoking, and I came down on her hard for her smoking because she was on oxygen 24/7. She was confined to a wheelchair because of severe emphysema. She wasn't even 50 years old yet, and she was confined to a wheelchair because of emphysema from years of smoking. But yet she was still trying to smoke. As someone who's not smoked, I can't say I understand that aspect. I do appreciate the fact that I do know it's hard for people. They get into these habits and they feel like they need it. They'll justify it any way they can. But in the end, it's damage to yourself. And even if the doctors tell you, you're not going to get better, but if you stop smoking, you can live longer. But some people, like my mother, just continued to do so. And, when she was with me that week, I gave her a hard time about her smoking. I told her that I didn't think she cared about the rest of the family and how we feel about what she does. We want her to be around with us. We want her to meet our grandkids. We want her to do these things. But if she's not around to do that because she doesn't care about what she's doing to us, then whatever. And now that sounds mean, right? My mother understood this. And one of the things that I am very blessed for is the fact that, and literally this is a cautionary tale. She came down that weekend. That weekend everyone got to see her. And she had not, because she lived pretty far away from everybody, some of these people, this is their first time seeing my mother in a very long time. For some people, longer than that, and some people for the first time. People that I worked with, people who came from, different other friendships were there. My other family were there at that point. My blood were there. And it was good to see the interactions, and she was being friendly with everyone, and she was having a good time. She was being what my mother always was, the center of attention, and someone who was a social individual, a social butterfly. Of course, she was upset because she had just lost her boyfriend after a long time. And of course, that's a normal thing, but she was still smoking, and I came down hard on that again. And then, Monday came, and she had to go home. I put her on the bus to go home. I talked to her Tuesday morning. She called me. I was getting ready to go back to work on Tuesday. And she had called me and said that, she wanted to make sure she had put her name into my complex to make sure that she could move there. When time came right, when one came available, I said, yeah, we took care of that. Everything's all set. I talked to them. And she said, I love you, and I told her I love her. I apologized to her for coming down harder. I said, I want to let you know that I wasn't trying to be mean. It's because I wanted you to be around longer, and I was worried they're going to lose you. She understood that, and she loved me for it. That was Tuesday morning, and I went to work like I normally would. And then Wednesday, late Tuesday night, I got a phone call from my sister saying my mother was in the hospital. Not thinking anything of it. I thought it was maybe, something to do with her oxygen or her breathing again, because I mentioned before that she was in and out of the hospital due to that anyway. I didn't know anything about it then because I was barely awake. She needed the number of one of the other relatives, her brother, I believe it was. I gave her the number, and I went back to sleep, went to work the next day. For some reason, and it's never happened before or since, I forgot my phone at home when I went to work that day. And the entire day I worked and didn't know anything about anything. And it was when I got home I got messages from people I haven't heard from in years. People that I don't even like calling me. People who I did like who are reaching out for no apparent reason. Because late Tuesday night, my mother went out to the store to be social with her friends and was hit. I didn't know that yet, but what I come to find out is my mother was basically struck and hit and killed in a hit and run down the Cape where she lived. 5 minutes, not even, right across the street basically from her house. Like her house was right there. She was going to get coffee and cigarettes, I guess, from my sister, whoever. And she was in her wheelchair, and a girl came and hit her and dragged her and left her there. And then partied afterwards. And my mom died. I found out the next day, and at that point she was already gone. But could you imagine if she had called on Tuesday morning and I decided not to pick up that phone call? Or I didn't answer the phone? That means that on Monday when I put her back on the bus, which by the way, that Monday when I put her on the bus to go home, that was the last time I'd see her alive. Something in retrospect. It's morbid, it's sad, but it's life. It's reality. So the next time your phone rings, it's mom or dad. And if you get along with them and whatever else, I do suggest you pick up the phone call. It doesn't necessarily have to be long. At least pick up the phone, tell her you'll call them back, and tell them you love them. Because that time's going to come when the phone's not going to ring anymore. They're not going to call you. It was always a customary thing on my birthday, March 23rd, at 3 a.m. I'd get a phone call from my mother every year up until that point. Well, the last 13 years, I've not had a phone call at 3 a.m. And before it would be a nuisance, and I rolled my eyes when the phone would ring at 3 a.m. on March 23rd every year. But now, looking back, I'm glad that I got those, and now I don't have those at all. So, the moral of this lesson is when you have a mom or a dad, you got to make the most of having those relationships with them when you have them. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. They're not guaranteed tomorrow. And if you say, I'll call you back tomorrow, and then tomorrow leads into next day turns into next week, truth be told, you're not guaranteed any of that. There's no promise there. Because anything can happen at any point. You never know. So when your phone rings and it says mom or dad, as long as you can answer the phone, I do suggest you answer the phone and talk to them. At least tell them you love them. Because you may never get another opportunity to hear their voice or say it to them ever again. Morbid, sad, yeah, it's reality. Years now, it's been 13 years since my mother's gone now. And later on this week I'll be doing a tribute show for her. And we'll be talking more in depth about her and kind of what happened, maybe have a guest on, maybe a couple. And when doing so, not a day goes by I don't think about my mom. There are different times in my life that, in the last 13 years I would have loved to have had my mother there. When I finally got married, now my kids are older. It would have been nice to see, just last night my wife was asking me what would happen if my mother was still around and how they would get along. And as I told her, I said, well, one, if my mother was still around, I could see, my mother getting our kids into trouble, and then getting our kids out of trouble, wherever she got them in, and then probably making sure they didn't tell us that they got in trouble, and that she got them out of the trouble that they got in. Because that was kind of how my mother was. She was spontaneous and someone who lived life and also was confrontational and didn't listen to authority often. She did what she wanted when she wanted. That no one was going to tell her otherwise. I think she would have loved her grandkids. I think she would have loved spending time with them. And I think that, they could have learned a lot from her. And hopefully they would choose not to smoke or drink or drug or anything like that. Now, to be fair, my mother, for the most part, was just a smoker. She did drink on occasion, but for the most part, smoking was her vice. And ultimately, it would cost her close to her life. It's a sad thing. And she started that to socially fit in with all the other kids in school. Started when she was about 12. I think it was 12 when she started. But it's a cautionary tale. It's a life lesson that we all need to learn. That life is precious and you only get one life and you got to live it up. My mother wasn't even 50 years old when she died. She was born in 1962. And she died in May of 2010. So, there's that. So, moral of the story, always take those times with the loved ones. Take those phone calls when they call. Even as annoying as they may be, you don't know what tomorrow brings because no one's guaranteed it. And I think that is the best point to end this particular episode. I want to say thank you to everyone who has listened. Hopefully this has helped someone or inspired someone. Tomorrow on the all-new F4L Headquarters podcast, I'm going to be doing some shout-outs to some people who've been working hard. Some of them some of them you don't. And we'll have a grand old time. Maybe we'll have a guest, maybe we won't. And many more things planned in the time to come. Feels good to be back doing the podcast again. And again, I want to apologize for not being as on here as much as I should be. But now that I'm fully committed and I no longer have anything else to distract me from it, I can focus more on this and also the icons of the F4L and bring it both back to where they need to be. So, with that being said, I am the icon, Sean Jazz Stevens, saying, may all your dreams come true. Peace from the F4L Headquarters podcast. Peace.